have my Stalker running. Well, you can see it there with the cutoff. Let me put the high beam on. There you go, the high beam. Hi, this is Nicole from Compatibility Custom, and in today's videos I'm going to do a deep dive covering all the details of my latest product, the Stalker, which is a Dynamo powered headlight with an StVZO cutoff beam, high beam function, USB charging, and a buffer internal battery. So let me flip the camera and I'll get to all the details. This video can serve you sort of an instruction manual, how to get the most out of it, how to connect it to your bike, and all details like this. There will be chapter marks, and if I miss something, just please leave a comment below. First of all, a bit of a very short background. I have more detailed videos on the subject card over there, link in the description. But what are dynamos? So dynamos are usually like this. This is a hub dynamo. They're laced in your wheel and they spin. So just like the generator that powers the lights in this workshop. They generate electricity obviously a lot less. They're not a nuclear power plant, but we're going to get into this. So they generate electricity. At the beginning, they were designed way back in the 60s, I want to say, or even before, by Stormy Archer. And there were a whole bunch of other manufacturers, and they were designed to power lights. However, nowadays we have other power needs on the bike. We have supercomputers in our pocket, like my phone. We have GPSs, cameras, and a whole bunch of other things that we want to power. So dynamos have kind of started to do this, and this is kind of like a power source that is always available, even though it is limited. And it's certainly better than batteries, at least in my opinion, for when it comes to reliability. So with that out of the way, let's jump straight into the Stalker. So here we are with my bench. So what do you get in the box? So this is the box. Purple Dog, Shadow Ops. I'm going to get to what Shadow Ops means in a minute, so stick around. And in the box you have your Stalker, like this one. This is a standard color, glows black. There's other colors, but then this is regular orientation, so it goes on your bike like this. You can have it also in an upside down, but you can't just flip if it's one of these. There's ways to do it. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. You have one cable to connect to your dynamo. And you have a remote control to access all the functions. I mean, this is the current model. There might be others if you're watching. This depends when you're watching this. So, connect it to your bike. Let's turn to the back. There's two cables. One is for power, so this cable goes to this one. And this is for the remote control. This is your rear light connection. It uses a 3.5 millimeter jack, like this one. You have your USB-C port right there behind the rubber cap. And I strongly suggest, if it's raining, to use the rubber cap like on. I rode a 200 km brevet in the pouring rain and it was fine. It's surprising how such a small thing, how big of an effect it can have. So before I get into the features, first things first, how do you connect it to your bike? First of all, it has a standard 10mm mount with an M6 or 6mm bolt. So this is pretty much standard with all mounts there. It all depends on your setup. That's why there is no mount included. If you need any specific mounts for your setup, just send me an email and I'll definitely discuss, because I've done quite some setups. So this is how you physically mount it, then how you connect it electrically. So this is the cable that goes to your dynamo. This works with most setups, even some internal fork routing, but this cable exists in a thin version, so it's as thin as this one. So if you have an internally routed fork, you let me know and I'll ship you the thinner one. Although this one works with most forks. In my opinion, this is more durable. This one is a bit more challenging to solder, but we're gonna get into this. So depends on your dynamo, how do you connect it. So if you're using Shimano Shutter Precision, you just need to bear the cables like this. Then you bear them. These are a bit staggered, obviously you do them even. You bear them, then you fold them in the connector, you connect them, and you're good to go. And then you connect your Stalker like this here. For Son or Schmidt dynamos, there's three possibilities actually. So the first one is the so-called spade connectors. This is the classic way, so they look like this. I can solder them with no extra charge, again, if you know cable length, etc. Otherwise, this is 1 meter. So this is the classic solution. In my opinion, they're quite flimsy. So the better way to do it is with the so-called Son coaxial adapter or connector, which is this one. So you get this one, and as you can see here, basically this part goes to the spade terminals instead of the connectors, and then you have a coaxial one. And this is a lot more robust. The connector is a lot more robust because in the middle of the night when it's raining and you're tired and you forgot you had a dynamo, you can rip the spade connectors quite easily. While this one, again, it's still a tight fit, but it's a lot more robust, so you're just gonna disconnect it. I mean, not such a big deal with Shimano and Shutter Precision. And I recommend this to clients, and pretty much everybody who I have recommended to has bought it, and I haven't had any returns. Again, this is not so easy to solder, so if you have any a specific cable length, let me know. This is extra charge, but it's definitely worth it, and I can solve it for you, no problem. I have experience doing that. And the third system, which is even the most elegant, though it is custom, is so-called the Son Stecklos or SL, like this one. As you can see, this Dynamo does not have any connectors because it uses these two parts. It uses the fork dropouts, and this is really quite foolproof. Obviously, you need to have a custom fork. If you have this system, you will know you have it. And if you're getting a custom bike, I sincerely recommend you get it. All my bikes that I make, because I also make custom bikes if you don't know, all the bikes I make are gonna have a fork with this because there's no extra cables running around, and you can put regular wheels, no problem, even if you're not running a Dynamo. But this is quite an elegant system, but it is custom. So this is the third way how you connect it to a Schmidt Dynamo. So for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm just going to use a bare cable that I'm going to connect to my lap transformer. So I'm going to uncoil it, and then we're going to get there. But you connect it to this side here, like this. The remote control, you connect it to the other one. I'm going to use my test button because the cable is longer and it's just easier. So it goes in here. Then let's go to the back. This is your rear light connection. For that, just to show you how the switching and everything works, I'm going to use my teeny rear light, this one, designed specifically to fit the dress mount. So there's the connector right there, the 3.5mm DC jack. So it goes like this in here. So let me plug everything in, and I'll be back to discuss all the features. And I know what you're thinking, why did I skip the USB port? I'm going to get to this, but for now I'm just going to plug it to power and start going over the features, and we're going to plug something in to show you how it charges in just a little bit. So now that I have everything connected, let me start going over the features, and let's turn our attention to the back. So in the back you have this indicator ring which shows you pretty much the status. So right now it's purple or violet, and it's purple when it's recharging the internal battery, and it becomes blue when the battery is full, which is it requires quite some steady riding because lithium-ion batteries are charged at a very slow rate at the end, but you mostly see it as purple. How you control it, and again, this is the current firmware as of today. I think it's April 2025, so if you're watching this later and it looks quite a bit different, this means there's been a firmware date. There usually is a separate video, but this is what is available right now. So the way I've done it is quite simple. You have one button, and with a long press, you switch it on and off. With a single click, you switch the high beam on and off, and with a double click, you change the dimming. So let me show you. So I'm going to take the button, and I'm going to hold it long. And there you go, it turns on, and it turns on the high beam as well, rear light as well. So right now you have both beams running, like this. Let me put it. So right now you have both the low and the high beam. So this is how it turns on, just to show you. So let me switch the high beam off. So here we are, this is your base state here. You see the cutoff there, the StVZO cutoff, where my finger is. You can see it very clearly with the line. So let me show you. One click, you turn the high beam on. There you go, high beam on. Another click, it goes off. Put it back on. And now I'm going to show you what happens with a double click. So you increase the intensity. This is half power. And this is full power. And the intensity change is regardless whether you have the high beam on and off. So I can switch it off now. You are at full power dip beam. Let me show you. Double click. High beam on. High beam off. Increase the dip beam. Put the high beam on top. And a long press switches it off. There you go. Rear light goes off as well. What's so special about the Stalker compared to what is out there? And the most special thing, besides the dimming, because there is currently no other Dynamo light that is dimmable besides my companion, which is another product I sell, is what I call shadow saw, which is the power flow control inside. And since it has a buffer battery inside, it has a control which decides when to use the battery and when to use the Dynamo. The priority is always on everything that is connected, so the LEDs, the USB port, the rear light, and anything extra gets stored into the battery. And probably what you think the obvious part is that when you stop, like let me show you right now when I disconnect it, the light stays on. So there you go, I disconnected it. As you can see, the LED ring is not on, which is disconnected, and nothing happened. This is obviously, Stumi Archer did this back in the day. They had a dry battery unit, they did it without semiconductors. I'm really curious how they did it. This is the more obvious part. The less obvious is at low speed, Dynamos flicker and produce not a lot of power. So when you're going slow, it's basically going to start taking some of the battery to fill in the gaps between when the Dynamo cannot produce. So what you have selected is what you're going to get within the limits of the buffer battery as well. However, it is designed and everything is adjusted so it works into most normal riding that you do. So let me plug it back in. And actually the real innovative part of StVZO is that the dynamo and the battery can work together. Basically, when you have really high power needs, when you have something charging on the USB port, you want full lights, and the dynamo simply cannot produce that much power because they're 3-watt nominal. Again, I have a video on the details. When you want that, basically it stops charging the battery and it combines the dynamo and battery together for a total, I think, 10-12 watts, which is way much more than any competitive product on the market does. I'm going to put a graph out there showing this. And following from this, StVZO also gives another option, which basically, if there's more power available, it will be able to take advantage of it. And if I'm currently working on a more powerful dynamo project with Son, Schmidt, Maschinenbau, Project X, card over there, I think, and also link in the description. So obviously this is fully compatible with 3-watt dynamos, but it has the electronics, and it's currently the only product on the market in the world that has the electronics to take advantage if there's more higher power dynamos available. And why would you need higher power dynamos? Basically, dynamos were never designed for the modern electronics in mind. They're designed with incandescent light bulbs, and the technology or regulation hasn't changed for more than 100 years. So it's time to see if we can change that. So the first most obvious feature that the Stalker has is the so-called StVZO cutoff beam, and you see it right there, the cutoff. And this is kind of like automotive headlights. It does not blind people, and a lot of people focus only on this part. However, I've talked about this before, and the StVZO regulation is based on like light pattern measured on a wall that's 10 meters away, and 10 meters is quite far. And this is where StVZO lights really shine, pun intended, is that they actually have a superior illumination distance compared to regular lights. It's not just the cutoff. So as you can see here, it's very easy to see it with the square. On top, I have my rear light with pretty much regular optics. They're oval optics with a cutoff, mind you, so you can see right there. They have a cutoff on the top, but it's very, very easy to see with the squares here. So basically, this illuminates much further, and if you're going anything above 15 kilometers an hour, if you have a simple round beam or even an oval beam like this one, you would outrun your beam very quickly, and it is quite dangerous, I think, especially for descending at night on technical roads. And some people say, I mean, obviously, they're not even at the same intensities. This is on low, so it's still a couple hundred lumens. But basically what happens when you increase the intensity, you just get brighter closer to you like this, and you still don't see much further, and your eyes focus on the brighter spot there. And again, like I mentioned, a 10-meter wall, so let me show you what I mean. You can see it with the squares. So as you can see here, you can see the cutoff beam right there. This is, based on a wall that, has similar squares like this. And that's how the regulation is. And let me show you this light here, how diffuse it gets, the real light. It still has a cutoff, but it is much more diffuse, a lot less focused. And like I mentioned, actually this is the most important part of the StVZO cutoff optics that a lot of people seem to miss. I mean, they focus only on the cutoff and not blinding people, which is important. I mean, you don't want to be the asshole with the 1000 lumen light shining into everybody's eyes. So riding with a cutoff beam is actually quite nice for road riding and when you're riding on public roads when there's traffic, etc. And it is actually, you see only where you need to see. That's why I call it focus mode. So now let's switch our attention to the so-called high beam, which I call far sight, which gives you even further illumination distance than what the cutoff can provide you. So with one click, you get to this part. So as you can see, now you'll be blinding people because on the top you have this. So only use this when you make sure you're not interfering with traffic. But this is very good for riding in forests or anywhere you have some kind of branches. And even on the road when you're descending, this gives you even much further illumination distance. And this is on low, so with a double click you go to full power, and this is plenty to illuminate. And again, if you're descending and you don't need it anymore, one click, you switch it off. And the high beam, like I mentioned, the StVZO always prioritizes this, so you have high beam pretty much at all speeds. Even if the internal battery is completely depleted because of the dimming, which gives you a low power mode, you will have the high beam available at lower speeds. Obviously, without the buffer battery, you won't be able to use everything at once, but because of all the control you have with the intensity and stuff, you will be able to have high beam at low speeds, which is no other dynamo like on the market does. They need to be going 15 kilometers an hour, or you need to ride at least half an hour to recharge the internal buffer. While this one, even if you don't have the battery inside, you'll be able to have it. Obviously, when you stop, the light goes off. And actually, this is what I wanted to show you, that the battery is not very charged, it's gonna reset like this. And this is actually normal, which means you're not producing enough power, and this is kind of like a warning. And this is the base state, that so in this state it can work happily, you still have the high beam. It's just a warning that you know, you might be using a bit too much power. Again, dynamos are not nuclear power plants. And also, if you're not going very fast and you're draining a lot the battery, the LED ring on top there will turn orange, and this is basically your indication. But basically, if you're asking for a lot of power, again, this is not a nuclear power plant. All features work even when you're loading the USB port, so high beam is on, and this is pretty much at all speeds. Again, if there's not enough, StVZO would start taking off from the battery, and at some point, you know, batteries are limited. So let's charge something on the USB port now. I'm going to charge my phone. It's not the latest and greatest phone, but it's a USB-C, so it requires an adapter because my phone is an older model. So I'm going to remove the cap, put the cable in, and let's see now. Let's charge my phone. It's quite discharged, so it will be a very good example of how things work. And as you see, 28%, so I'm going to leave it like this, and I'm going to start addressing the USB port, and most importantly the question, would it charge my Garmin, would it charge my phone, etc, etc. For that, I'm going to put these things away, I'm going to let it to charge. Let's see how fast it charges. And as you can see, I have everything connected, charging, and all the features are there. So I'm on a low dip beam. Let's put the high beam on. Let's go to full power. So here we are, and the question, would the Stalker charge my device, and if not, why not? And to understand this, I'm gonna talk about standards. So like I mentioned, in the Stalker you have a lithium-ion battery inside that fits the USB port. So let me do a lithium-ion battery here. There you go, 3.7 volts. And you have a USB-C port, as we're all very familiar, 5 volts. Obviously it doesn't matter, this could be the mains voltage in your house and any kind of other adapter, but since we're talking about the Stalker, this is what you have. So 3.7 volts needs to go to 5, so you need to convert it. And this is quite efficient usually because there's plenty of devices that have lithium-ion battery and USB and all that. So chip manufacturers have gotten pretty good, and this is about 90 to 95% efficient, obviously no ideal conditions. And this is where things get interesting. Basically, your device, your phone, your GPS, and anything you want to charge also has another lithium-ion battery inside. So, another lithium-ion battery here, 3.7 volts. Again, the obvious 3.7 is not 5. And this is where things get interesting, and that's why we need to have standards. And that's why I'm going to go with red here. So, this is why there are standards, because lithium-ion batteries, like women, if you don't treat them right, they get very angry and they explode. And I'm being a bit over dramatic here, but you should be careful when you do that. And obviously this is not your responsibility, this is the responsibility of your device. Basically your phone, your GPS, everything has one of these things inside. This is a lithium-ion type of charging chip. And there's two types. There's linear, like this one. It's very small, very compact, very straightforward. Or switch mode. This one can produce a lot of power, so basically if it has any kind of fast charge, it probably has one of these inside. And like the important point is that those things decide if they're gonna accept what is available here. Your device like has one of these. There's probably thousands and thousands of those out there. When your device has one of those, and they're either programmed, they're programmed from the factory, or the manufacturer decided to program them, and they decide how they're gonna charge a lithium-ion battery. So this is part 1. Part 2 is how are they gonna take care of the available power, because as you can imagine, at the time of this video there is USB-C power delivery, and a lot of people just see the USB-C port and they immediately think USB power delivery, but that's not the case. Basically this is the latest standard and the current standard, but there's older standards, so they're usually made to be backwards compatible, and they range anywhere from half an ampere, so 2.5 watts, up to 120 or probably even more at the time of this video, 120 watts. So basically what is gonna happen if this is a 120 watt device and you plug it in a 2.5 watt charger? Again, being over dramatic, this is probably gonna last about 3.2 seconds and it's gonna go in a puff of smoke. And worst case scenario, it's gonna burn down your house or jump the fuse and anything like this. And that's why we come to USB standards. And the chip there and the manufacturer who put the chip in there has decided to respect those standards is a continuous headache for people like me who make any kind of USB-C charging devices. Basically, you cannot keep making higher and higher power adapters because they get expensive, and it also creates electronic waste because we have tons of chargers at our home. I have probably 3 or 4 that I use on a regular basis that range anywhere from 2.5 to 10 watts, and they work just fine. But basically, what happens if this is 120 watt device and you plug it into 2.5 watt charger? Obviously, the ideal world, and we don't live in the ideal world, that's why there's continuous headaches for people like me. Basically, there's standards, and these chips kind of designed to probe what is around there. And basically, it says, okay, it's not 120, so what can you give me? So basically, the pattern nowadays, and again, this might change, is that this continually probes the adapter because you don't care what it is. It's like a thing. Can you have your charger? So you just plug it in and expect it to charge. So this continuously probes and sees what it can provide. Obviously, there's manufacturer-specific adapters, but I think because of EU regulation, this is starting to be phased out. I sincerely hope so. And basically, this device charges only with a specific adapter. But the pattern is that this takes what is available and just charges slowly. It might give you a warning, but even it doesn't do that. Problem is when manufacturers don't follow this, sometimes they simply refuse to charge, and there's the end of it. The USB specification is about 250 pages. It covers anything from the port and to electrical specifications. And whether the manufacturer is even aware or decided to use this, the pattern is that this, with the chip inside, like let me draw this, a chip here, with the chip inside, decides how much it can use, and it's usually happy about it without overloading the adapter and burning down your house. But again, just like bottom bracket, since we're talking the cycle industry, everybody has their own take on it, and I'm continuously improving this. So at the time of this video, the Stalker supports up to USB 7.5 watt standard, and of course standards are backwards compatible. So as I mentioned, they go usually to 2.5 watts, and usually it is hard-coded in these chips. If the adapter is unknown, basically, am I going to kill you in 3.2 seconds or not? If it doesn't know that, it charges at a very slow rate, but it still charges. Again, if you plug in something in the Stalker and it doesn't want to charge, there's literally thousands and thousands and thousands of devices. That's why they're standards, because you cannot test everything. But again, whether your device wants to charge, it depends on your device, not so much on the Stalker. And again, this is a continuous headache for people like me, but I sincerely hope the pattern continues, that it basically makes maximum use of available adapter power. So this is a very long answer to your question that would my device charge is yes, it should, but whether it has been done to do that, I don't know. And I've done my best to test things, and I've done my best to follow standards. Whether the manufacturer, like Garmin, Wahoo, Apple, etc., have decided to follow that, this is a whole other story. And again, this is their part of the deal. And a practical use, actually, if you're out there, you went on a trip, you bought a Stalker for me, you bought a product, or from anybody else, and it simply doesn't charge your device, and you need your phone, you need to call somebody. Actually, the best solution is always to carry a power bank, because power banks are actually a lot more flexible, and this is my experience. Basically, carry a power bank, they're a lot more flexible, and they usually respect most and are happy with pretty much any kind of standard there. So charge the power bank and then use the power bank to charge your device. This is all I can say, because if your device simply refuses to charge and the internal battery is full, practical example, just charge a power bank. So one thing that you might want to do with your Stalker is change the orientation. Like I mentioned, it has an StVZO style cutoff beam, so you can't just flip it physically around, because you're gonna blind people, and also you're not gonna see a damn thing. So you can flip the orientation yourself. This is not something you do every day. This is basically if you change setups, or you order the wrong one and then you change setups, or you're not sure, you get a new bike, put eyebrows, that kind of stuff. So this is something you can do every once in a while. You need gloves because there's thermal grease inside, and it's not toxic or anything, but it gets everywhere, and it's a bit annoying. And you need a microfiber cloth to wipe the grease or any kind of smudges. And you need your remote. I'll show you why, because once you disconnect everything, it resets and the LEDs are turning on. They turn quite bright. So before we get into changing the orientation, let me show you something at the front. If the camera picks it up, because of the StVZO style cutoff and the high beam and stuff, the optics are asymmetric and they have these kind of facets, like right there. And I don't know if you can see, basically there's the top of the optics, and since there's an LED matrix inside, there's only one good orientation. So that's part one. Make sure everything stays in the correct orientation. Otherwise, you're not gonna see a damn thing and you're gonna blind people. And the second thing is hold everything together. Do not let anything twist too much when you're doing it, and take your time. It's not too difficult, but definitely take your time. And another thing is, because the optics are symmetric, there's quite a bit of adjustment. So as you can see now, there's no real gaps. There's rubber rings there to keep everything waterproof. So before you tighten everything completely, get things like semi-tight or a bit on the loose side, and you have to align everything to make sure everything compresses nicely. So let's get into it. So again, this is how you're going to do it. Gloves also help with a bit of grip, and like I mentioned, don't let anything twist. There's rubber rings which kind of give you a bit of resistance. So we're going to remove the cap first, like this. There you go, just get it started. It's a fine thread and it comes off. I mean, and these are how the optics are. They have a rubber ring. If you like remove it, there's a way to put it on. I'll show you at the end. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So there's the LED matrix inside and there's a hole right there. So this is the top. This is kind of parallel to everything there. So this is the top of the optics, and there's only one good way. The optics have, like I showed you, they have a foot and it goes right there on the top. It's preferred to keep the optics inside the correct orientation, like this. Hold them at the edge so you make sure things don't twist. So this is regular orientation, and we're going to flip it to upside down. So remove the middle part. There you go. You remove the optics, put them to the side. You remove the part, there you see the thermal grease. And also the rear light connection is usually signifying the top of the optics. So in this case it's there at the top, so you just push the electronics out and you can just gently turn the housing 980 degrees. Obviously don't force anything, and there you go. So now it's upside down. As you can see, the top of the optics, the top of the matrix is right there where the mount is. So put the middle part back on, put the optics in. So with the optics you make sure nothing twists. And that's why you need your remote. Don't look at the LED, because once you connect everything it's going to go to low power, so switch it off. And there you go. And start screwing things in. And again, there's a bit of an adjustment like this, and also to the center. So right now it's a bit to the right, so let's put it back in. Again, we still have quite some to go. And as it starts to get tightish, you leave it like this. Check the back. Oh, the back is pretty good. And this is the important part now. Don't get things super tight, because the optics need to be in the center. So that's why you get the cap. If the rubber ring comes off, there's a way to put it in. So you hold it with your thumb on one side and then you stretch it around. Don't try to roll it, because it's going to try to unroll. So things are not super tight now. We put the cap back on, and the idea is to make everything is in the middle. And that's why things are a bit loose, so you can kind of put everything in the middle and make sure everything is nicely aligned. So there you go, the optic should start coming in, and then you should start feeling the rubber ring. There you go, it might even click a bit. Let's see, everything is a bit... You might have to overdo it to one side, and then as you tighten it, it goes in the middle. Again, take your time, it's not difficult. So there you go, I start feeling the rubber rings here. Everything is nicely aligned, and you hold the optics nicely, gloves help here, and you tighten this part completely. As far as it will go. The last quarter of a turn is quite tight because you're compressing the rubber ring. There you go. And then we finish with the cap. And again, the cap, when you start compressing the rubber rings, you're going to start feeling it. So hold everything, make sure nothing twists. And there we go. Now you have it upside down. Let's test everything works. And that's how you change the orientation on the Stalker. So another thing that you might want to do with your Stalker is change the internal buffer battery, because lithium-ion batteries have a finite lifestyle. This is a standard 18350 lithium-ion cell, like this one. Eventually it might start losing capacity and not acting how you want it, so you can replace it without any special tools or without soldering. What do you need? You need gloves, gives you a bit of grip when you screw things, and also there's thermal grease inside. Nothing toxic, but you know, it's just annoying and gets everywhere. You need microfiber cloth to wipe any thermal grease or smudges from the optics, and your remote control, because once you connect and disconnect things, it's going to reset. And don't look at the LEDs because they're quite bright. And before we start, so let's turn our attention to the front. This is upside down orientation that we flipped from regular in the previous part of the video. So the optics have facets like this. This is how you get the symmetric and the high beam and all that. And there's a top right there by, let's see if you can see this, by, there's this top part right there. And also the mount is at the rear right connection is at the side of the mount. So when you start doing things, take your time. Don't rush, don't let anything twist too much, because you're going to rip connectors and cables, so always hold. The optics can be used for that. And there's three parts, so there's cap, middle and back, and there's rubber rings in between. There shouldn't be any real gaps when you finish. If there's gaps, which means you didn't align things, so we start again. And it's really important to keep the waterproofness right before you finish, to make sure everything is not super tight, so you align everything inside. And then you tighten it fully, otherwise it will not be waterproof, and it's obviously, you know, going to get water damage inside. So let's start. You hold the optics and let's unscrew the cap. Obviously at the beginning it might give you a bit of resistance because of the rubber rings. There you go, put it aside. The optics have a rubber ring. Try to keep it on. If not, if you're afraid you're going to lose it, you can take it off. There's a way to put it on, I'll show you at the end. So let me take the optics off to show you what I mean. So let me show you what I mean by this. So you have the LED matrix right there, the yellow part, and this is the top right there. As you can see, they're kind of parallel to this hole and not parallel to the other two. So this is the top, and this is where it's kind of like on a tripod, like the top foot of the optics goes. I mean, put them back in, correct orientation, because you will need them to hold them so things don't twist around. Obviously it might be tight because of the rubber rings, but make sure you hold the optics so you don't twist anything. Take everything out. Take the middle part out. That's the thermal grease, so be careful how you touch things. Again, it's nothing toxic, so you start pushing the electronics from the back like this. You can leave this part. Again, you can remove the remote if you want, but I just kept it for convenience. And you start pushing the cables a bit because they're kind of tight. As you can see, the front part comes out, and that's your battery. The plus is that way towards the LEDs, so you can see you can take it out and put it back in. There's a reverse voltage protection, but again, it's simply not gonna work. Once you plug everything in, it's gonna reset and gonna light up. That's why you need the remote, and don't look at the LED. Let's start putting it back together. This is where you might get some thermal grease on your hands. It's easier to see that way. So actually it's a bit unnatural here. Don't try to get the cables as tight as you think. So start getting them tight, and you need to twist it a bit. So as I said, the mount is at the top of the optics, so there. It should be pretty okay, especially if it's been working on for a while, because everything is nicely settled from all the heat. Let's see. And there you go. It compacts into a nice package. Again, don't look at the LEDs. Let's get some of the thermal grease out. Put everything in, and this was upside down. I'm going to put it back to regular because this is my Expo one, and it's easier to put on the stand. So let's see, top is there, and it's in. I got thermal grease everywhere, but that's why I have the microfiber cloth. Switch it off. Again, as you lose contact on and off, it might switch on and off. So you put the middle part in your hands so you don't get all the smudges on the optics. Let's see. It's a bit to one side, but we're gonna fix that. So you put the optics in. There you go, put everything, and you start screwing things in. And the thread catch, it's a fine thread, so it's gonna catch nicely. And there you go. The important part is not get it tight right now. As you can see, the mount is a bit twisted, so let's put it vertical. And this is the important part now, that you align everything in the middle. And let me show you if the rubber ring has come off. Like now, You put your thumb on one side, on the flange of the optics, and you stretch it around. Don't try to twist it because it's simply gonna untwist. Now you put the cap back on. And now, because it's loose, it can still move a bit and align with the cap, which is pretty good. It's coming. I mean, there shouldn't be any real resistance. You might hear it clicking into place. You might have to like do the optics, like the whole thing a bit to that side, so when you tighten it, it goes in the middle. Again, take your time, it's nothing complicated. So get the cap until it touches the rubber ring, so you start feeling resistance. And hold the optics, gloves help here, and start screwing the middle part all the way in. There we go. And then you finish with the cap. Again, you should feel the rubber rings compressing. There we go. I mean, give it like some time to settle, like a couple seconds, and then make sure it doesn't go any further. There you go. Wipe any thermal grease that you got on there from the optics. And there you go. Let's test everything. Everything works. There you go. Gaps are as they were, so it's waterproof. And you have a Stalker with a brand new buffer battery installed. So this is the final section, an FAQ of sorts, frequently asked questions. Obviously, if I miss something, leave a comment and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. So the first question is it compatible with My Dynamo? And the answer is yes, it's compatible with all regular tier dynamos. I know I briefly mentioned the Project X Dynamo. The Stalker actually has the electronics to take advantage if there's ever higher power dynamo available. Project X is currently in the prototype stages, and whether it becomes a product, I don't know. But I have to repeat this, that it's compatible because of the StVZO electronics inside. It's compatible with all regular dynamos. My Stalker, if your Stalker is really dead, like you cannot turn it on with the button and all that, and this is perfectly normal because of the StVZO, you just need to go for a ride and it's gonna wake up. Obviously all functions will work, not all together. I mean, you have high beam and all that, you won't be able to have full power and charge something. You have to pick and choose because you don't have the buffer to take up the slack. Why did my Stalker go into a low power mode, which is lower than normal? This is a base state, and this is when basically you really ask a lot from the electronics and it goes into a low power state. This is a safety feature, so you always have lights, and if it keeps doing that, just disconnect something from the USB port and it should be okay. Or you need to be going a bit faster if the battery is depleted and you want full power. But again, this is normal and this is a bit of a safety feature, so nothing to worry about. Just it's telling you that there's not enough power. It cannot deliver all the power that you want from it, so you need to make some choices. Would it charge my phone, GPS, etc.? I have a much more detailed section and the answer is well, it should, but if it doesn't, it means either the internal buffer is drained or if it's full, like this is blue, the LED is blue. It depends on your device, so the safest bet is to carry a power bank and charge the power bank and use that to charge your devices, because power banks are a lot more flexible when it comes to standards. And Stalker is not a 10,000 mAh power bank, it's a Dynamo powered charger just with a buffer to take up the slack and make up for the limited. What is the warranty? The internal buffer battery is limited to 2 years. You can change it yourself. I carry the spares and you can send it to me for changing. And otherwise, if you have any issues, just let me know and it's fully repairable and I'll take care of it. How waterproof is it? I mean, it's really important that you keep the rubber cap on. I rode it in a 200-kilometer brevet in the pouring rain. I charged everything in the beginning before the rain because I knew of the forecast. Use a bit of common sense. I mean, if you think it's too risky to charge, it probably is. While this is waterproof, your devices are probably not, so use common sense, and if it's like light drizzle, it's fine, probably, but if it's a tropical typhoon, most likely try to keep it as watertight as possible. What kind of rear lights does it take? This is limited to anywhere between 1.5 and 2.5 watts, so most standard Dynamo lights will work. High power e-bike lights are not going to be compatible. And basically if you connect and it switches off, this means it's triggering the internal overcurrent protection.